Guitar tips, guitar tips, just the tips, just for you. Guitar tips. Hello and welcome to Guitar Tips. My name is Adam Levy. I'm your host here in sunny Los Angeles, California. Actually, the sun's going down here as I'm making this, so it may be shady by the time we get to the end, but stay with me and I'll try to bring as much light as I can into the music. And this week's tip is dig Ted Greene. Dig Ted Greene. If you've never heard of Ted Greene, that's okay. You might want to look him up before we go any further. He was a great guitar player and a legendary guitar teacher in the Los Angeles area. I studied with him in the late 1980s for just a few years. And I learned so much. I can't think of anybody else on the guitar who has had a more profound and lasting effect on my musicality and just the way I see the guitar. So I just wanted to talk about him a little bit here. And, some of you have asked me in the comments section on a few of the more recent videos where I've mentioned Ted. A few of you have asked me, hey, could you talk a little bit more about Ted or maybe show us some Ted stuff? Ted's thing was really deep. There's no way in a short guitar tip video that I could even scratch the surface of Ted Greene's mastery of the guitar or his brilliance as a teacher. So instead of trying to do like a whole, Ted Greene documentary / masterclass here, I just wanted to share a couple of the things, really personal things that I learned from Ted, and maybe they're things that you can take with you into your playing. And I hope that you will look him up and learn more about him. There's lots of videos of him on the internet. The earlier videos, he's usually playing a Telecaster. Towards the end of his life, in the last 5 or 10 years, he got really into Guild guitars. He wrote a bunch of books. This is my favorite one. This is called Modern Chord Progressions. Currently published by Alfred. It's been published by different people over the years with different covers, but the material inside has not changed. You can see it's mostly handwritten in Ted's kind of guitar neck diagram way. It's not, there's no manuscript here. It's all just dots and stuff like that, which makes it really accessible if you're not a great reader. It could take you a little bit of time to get into the finer points of Ted's stuff where, he'll have a chord and then some melody stuff moving around within the chord. He has a particular way of doing that, but it's totally worth figuring out his written language on the guitar, because once you get it, it's easy then to plow through. No, his material is a little more advanced than that. Not to plow through, but to work your way through other lessons. He wrote a book called Chord Chemistry. That's a very good book, probably his most famous book. But I personally have gotten a lot more mileage out of Modern Chord Progressions. There's stuff in there about voice leading. There's stuff in there really focusing on the melody part of the chords more than on the low notes, which visually I think we tend to focus on the bass notes in chords, especially jazz chords. Maybe it's because the bass note is closer to your face. Maybe it's because we name chords usually from the bass. So this would be a C6 chord with C in the bass, C, G, A, E. But through Ted's book and through studying with him, I got to think of this really more as an E melody note with this chord supporting it, One thing that I learned from Ted that I use a lot is double stops. I think we've touched on them a little bit here, but it's just a way. I don't know if you saw it in the intro. You could rewind and look at it again if you want to. I played this chord, which is A minor major 7. Now, this is your normal A minor, the way that most people play it. And you could certainly put a G sharp on there. You've got 4 fingers. You could do it that way. I played it this way, leaving my ring finger free. So first of all, how did I do it? I did it by, if your hand is turned a little bit, not from here, but here, and you don't try and touch both strings, but just try and touch the wood in between, you can get these 2 notes. You could do it on different strings. You could do it with your first finger if you wanted to. Your third finger can do double stops. It's a little harder with the pinky because I think you need that turnout, and it's harder with the pinky to get that much turnout, but you could do it if you wanted to. So that's the how I did it. Why did I do it? Well, I wanted to have this melodic motion in there, and if I was playing it this way, I guess I could move my pinky there, but that sounds a little bit herky-jerky. This is, I can get a little more sustain. Well, that's another thing. Neck vibrato. Ted would do a little bit of that. Now, it may not be obvious. It might just look like I'm shaking the neck around, and that is true. But the part that you may not notice is that you have to grip here. You have to hold the guitar steady, so the neck is actually bending just a little bit. You know, it should be wavering. Don't go too far with it. A little goes a long way, but it can add some depth, dimension, especially with an electric guitar with a little bit of reverb on. Really sounds nice. Another thing I picked up from Ted was, well, 2 things about voice leading. 1 is always voice lead, and 2 is don't always voice lead. So voice leading is like if I'm on this C major 7 and I want to go to F major 7, of course you could just move it up. That's fine. Or you could move it across. That's fine. But if you looked at what those pitches are on music paper, there's a lot of motion going. So why not look for an F major 7 that's a little closer to home? So there's one right there. Here's another double stop. So I'm playing C, F, A, E. You could call that, you know, a second inversion F major 7 chord. Okay. So that's a beautiful sound. Ted encouraged me to work on voice leading, but then I got home from that lesson so freaked out. I thought the lesson was always voice lead, no matter what. And that freaked me out and paralyzed me because I just thought I'll never be able to voice lead all the time. Went back to my next lesson, and Ted could see that I was literally in a panic. And he was like, no, man, don't, you don't have to take it that literally. Voice lead when you can, but don't let rules like that stop you from making music. Make some music, and, you know, voice lead when you can, if you like it. If you don't like voice leading, you certainly don't have to ever voice lead. But if you like it as a sound, even still, don't let it get in the way. Just make some music. He was always encouraging me to make music. And that's another thing, was that he, you know, you might, if you know something about Ted, if you've heard his record solo guitar, or if you've watched some videos, you might think he was just always about playing big, lush chords, and, you know, he was, but he also knew that that wasn't the thing that turned everybody on about music, and he really tapped into the stuff that I liked, especially at the time, which was blues. I was really into Albert King during the time I was studying with Ted, so he was trying to expand my blues awareness and vocabulary. So we spent a whole lesson just basically listening to one song. He had a recording of it. I think it was on a record. It might have been on a cassette. This was... anyway, the song was Honky Tonk by Bill Doggett. Bill Doggett was an organ player, and his guitar player was a guy named Billy Butler. And the guitar solo on that, it's just 3 choruses of blues in F, but it's totally well composed. It sounds like a perfectly beautiful composition inside this, kind of groovy blues walk thing that's going on. I'm not going to play it for you now, but I would encourage you to look up Honky Tonk Part 1 by Bill Doggett and check out the guitar solo. And the tone on it is great. The solo builds thematically and it builds dramatically. It's just freaking amazing. So I learned that in 1987 or 88, and I could still play it today because it had a huge impact. So Ted was really into staying turned on the guitar, not learning stuff because you had to or because you were supposed to, but because you wanted to. And he had a similar approach to getting chords. Finding some new sounds. Like if you heard it and it made musical sense to your ears and to your imagination, try and find a way to do it on the guitar, even if the fingering was unconventional. Or like I have this arrangement of Maria from West Side Story. Partway through it, I go. So this is not a conventional fingering of G. I'm playing low G, open D, G, B, high D fingered. And then the melody goes down to C sharp. Now you could do the same thing by playing the bass note up here. It's just not as dramatic. I could move the whole melody down an octave. But I wanted the maximum drama at that moment in the song because lyrically and in the narrative of the song, it is the most dramatic moment. Maria, say. Now I do drop it down an octave in the very next phrase. And say it loud as music playing. Say it so it's almost like praying, Maria. So that was a little harmonic move. Ted was a master of what some people call harp harmonics, where you're combining plucked non-harmonic notes with false harmonics. False harmonics is, the way I make them, is you go 12 frets up from wherever this note is, and you don't press down here, you just touch the string right above the fret. So I'm at the 16th fret, and then I'm going to pluck could alternate between there we go. And whatever the shape of the chord is here, you'd have to trace it. So if you were just playing like a G bar chord, you'd have to imagine a G bar chord shape up here. Doesn't make for a very interesting harp thing because there's just a lot of doubled notes. So harp harmonics are nice when you're playing a bunch of individual notes without repeats. So even just a straight bar, it does have repeated notes on the outside, but a bunch of other notes on the inside. Yeah, I'm thinking about it and tripping myself up. Don't think about it too much, just do it. So that's a nice thing that you can kind of sprinkle some fairy dust into your playing with. That's a neat thing to do. Another neat harmonic trick that I picked up from Ted was you can play just the bottom note of a simple jazz chord as a harmonic. So I'm playing this as a harmonic, and then these three are not harmonic. And what it does is it puts this bottom note up an octave. So instead of the C and the B being separated, they're right next to each other. So you get this kind of chord. Without having to tweak your hand out, and you also get this kind of magic of the, you know, kind of mysterious sound. It doesn't sound like other chords. Again, particularly effective with an electric guitar, with a little bit of reverb, and just kind of a nice big sound. But just even here on an acoustic guitar, it does something nice. There we go. Maybe I'll throw in one or two more little things. A neat thing that Ted was really good at is taking stuff that we all know on the high strings. This could be E minor 7 flat 5, or it could be the upper part of a C9 chord. And he would move it to the lower strings and just get a completely, I'm getting a little button rattle here, a much warmer sound. You could do it up here too. I don't have a lot of room to get there because this is just a 12 fret guitar, but you can hear how much warmer either of those is than playing it this way. So even if you don't have a big jazz guitar with heavy strings on it, you can still kind of get a warmer sound out of whatever strings and guitar you have by moving stuff higher up the neck and one string set over. Ted was really masterful at that. He could play lots of stuff up here that you would see these shapes and they would look like nothing you'd ever seen before, and when you realized that they're similar to, you know, stuff here or here, just played up here for effect, it was neat. I still think about wanting to learn more about this stuff. Also, when you play it on these lower strings, then you still have, you know, more room to do melodic stuff above the chords. So if you're trying to get a pianistic approach where you have a, you know, big chord stuff and then more stuff on top melodically, moving it over to these lower strings gives you more room to operate melodically on top. So what did we talk about? We talked about double stops. We talked about neck vibrato. We talked about going for things, even if the fingering is a little bit unorthodox. You know, Ted would play maybe something like this. He didn't have particularly big hands, but he had big ears, so he would go for these kind of sounds. This is like a B13 sus, B, A, C sharp, E, G sharp, and I'm getting the top two notes E, and then G sharp is with the side of that finger. It's a nice way to get an extra note if you hear it and want to hear it. You know, I guess you could also do that same chord this way. Now I'm doing a little sort of mini bar with my pinky. It's another way to get that. So, you know, don't think that if you don't have big hands, you can't get at big sounds on the guitar. You just have to have big ears and a big imagination. There's one other thing I wanted to mention about Ted. There's a website. I was going to say he has a website. He's passed away, but there is a website that's got a lot of lessons, arrangements of solo guitar arrangements of standard tunes, and exercises and just little studies. My friend Mark Goldenberg recently showed me this thing, which I think does come from the TED site. It's about tenths. Tenths on the guitar are like that. It's like a third, but separated by an octave. If you know how to play Blackbird, that's all tenths. And it's called that because it's the interval of a tenth is, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a tenth. So this is about tenths with an inner pedal. And a pedal just means a note that stays in common as the chords are changing. So I'm just reading this off the TED sheet, so pardon me if it's a little bit shaky. But 1, 2, 3. So the first half, this B note is pedaling. So as the outside notes move in tenths, excuse me, one more time. This B note stays in common. Hear that? And then the next set has this E note in common. As the tenths move on the outside, you've got this inner pedal. So again, 2, 3. You could play it faster. That's, to my ears, a very Ted kind of beauty. He was really great not just at jazz, but at Baroque style harmony and pop harmony and blues harmony and gospel harmony, and just such a vast I don't know what else to say. Go dig Ted Greene. That's the guitar tip this week. Dig Ted Greene. Dig him. Dig Ted Greene. Open your ears, open your imagination, open your hands, open your heart, and dig Ted Greene. For guitar tips, I'm Adam Levy. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned and take good care.